Talk amongst yourselves. It's all good. Okay.
Klimt.
All right. I see that it is 9 o'clock, so I'm going to call this meeting of the Okaloosa County School Board in session. Good morning, everyone. Okay. All right. First of all, we're going to start with the approval of the agenda. Any changes to the agenda? I've not gotten any. Do we have some? Oh, okay. Let's look at that. Thank you. Okay. All right, so it appears that we have deleted 4.1, appointment of principal at Northwood Elementary School. So we have taken that off our agenda. So with that, we will,
Madam Chair, I
Yeah.
move that we adopt the agenda with that amendment.
Well, we're not
do that
voting
tonight.
in the workshop.
Oh, you know what?
Yep.
I'm getting way ahead of myself. Thank
That's
you for
okay.
that.
You're hoping it's tonight. I got you. We're moving on.
Doing your vice chair duty.
I was on it. I was ready.
You were on it, yes, I appreciate that. Okay, so we've got that noted, that change. All right, hang with us, we've got new positions on the board today, so we're moving along, so.
And Madam Chair, and we can go through 4.2 and 4.3, but just want to go back to section 3 for the recognition when
Yes,
when you'd like to.
Yes, okay, moving along to 3, recognitions, 3.1, proclamation of National Education Support Professionals Day. You're going to be presenting that tonight, right, Superintendent? Okay, and then do you have anything else?
Yes, ma'am. So this is more of a surprise, and so we do have 2 members who work with our school board members. And the School Board Association has in essence, a certification that folks in these positions will go through. And these 2 individuals earned their Certified Support Professionals designation through the School Boards Association, which is a big deal. And in the email that came, let me know this, there was also commentary just how these 2 went above and beyond and how excellent they were going through the process and just how excellent they are in their roles in general. And this prestigious designation honors support staff who demonstrate a strong commitment to professional development, excellence in their roles, and unwavering dedication to supporting their school board members and advancing the mission of public education in Florida. And we have 2 members who have received this designation. And first of all, we have Miss Amber Floyd, who has received this designation. And then we also have Miss Mary McGowan, who has received this designation. And I'm just going to read the plaque for both of them. And this is for Miss Floyd and Miss McGowan. Certified Support Professional, Florida School Boards Association. This designation recognizes school district support staff who have demonstrated a strong commitment to ongoing professional development, excellence in their role, and a dedication to supporting our district's school board members and the mission of public education in Florida, and then certified by the School Board Association for the state of Florida. And I would just like to say, in sharing Ms. Floyd with you all, just absolutely appreciate all that she does. I'll just say for this individual here is someone who keeps me sane, and I would not be where I am today without her. And Miss Mary, you've stepped straight into this role. Now it's been for a little bit of time now, but you stepped in and have been flawless, and you've done this role with grace and compassion, and just appreciate what you do each and every day. And we do have a plaque, but before we go there, school board members might have some words as well.
Okay, anybody would like to make some comments?
Madam Chair, I'd like to thank Mary for handling me, because that's what the job is, handling me and getting everything done. And I still have future challenges for you. And Amber, I want to promise you that I'm going to get my travel vouchers into you for the last 3 months here soon.
Don't bet on it.
I'm taking the blame up here. It's not Amber's fault.
Yep.
Madam Chair, I'd just like to say that I don't think there's any way that I could list all of the things that these 2 ladies do for this school board and ultimately, because of our actions, what they do for this school district. I mean, we all know, we could talk about the awards night and those things. We could talk about setting up these computers and preparing the agenda and preparing all the documents that have to be signed. I just thank you again and again for everything, and congratulations. Congratulations.
Madam Chair, I'll just jump in and say that I deeply, deeply appreciate both Amber and Mary, as Brett and I are brand-new school board members, not from the institution itself. There's a gigantic learning curve that is shortened and made a lot easier courtesy of the efforts and help and assistance of Amber and Mary. So just over this last year, from me, thank you very much.
And if I could comment, Madam Chair, as an executive officer for the Florida School Boards Association, this was something that was brought to us by somebody that sits in the same positions that Ms. Floyd and Ms. McGowan sit in at the Florida School Boards Association. And she took it upon herself, her name is Carolyn Sanders, to come up with this program to help school board administrative assistants to be more in tune of what their job is, because just like Mr. Desson just said, you know, as school board members, sometimes we're kind of like deer in the headlight look sometimes when it comes to things, and we rely on the administrative assistants to help us out. But then this gives them an opportunity to understand what our roles are and how they can best benefit us. And so with that, you know, having this certified position, the certified title for school board administrative assistants is something that's great. I know it's helped them, because Ms. Sanders tells me all the time that Okaloosa is one of her people that call all the time and ask for advice and suggestions and all that. So I know they really took it to heart. And I think there was only about 20 this go around that actually got recognized. So that says a lot that they're in good company with some other good, fine administrative assistants out there. But I will just say personally, without Mary and Amber, I would be lost. So.
I agree with all those comments, and just want to say I'm sure everyone can understand what it takes to get 5 board members at the right place at the right time, you know, and that's a lot. And they continually, and it's not only that they do it, they're so good at what they do, but their personalities are wonderful to work with. They're always upbeat. They're always so forgiving of our mistakes. And we sure do appreciate both of you with everything, because we end up looking good. And part of that's because of what you do for us. So again, thank you so much.
Madam Chair, I don't participate in these discussions when the board are having these things, but I would appreciate the courtesy of letting me comment on these two
Certainly.
ladies. In my role with the board, I work daily with both Amber and Mary, and I just want to say that they are consummate professionals. They are dedicated to this board and the school district, and the work that they help me to do is always first class, and I appreciate very much both of them, and just wanted to make that comment publicly.
Thank you, Mr. McGinnis.
All right, you come in, and if board would stand behind, and we'll go down here.
I look cute next to Linda. Now I'm gonna look like a small guy.
That's the problem with sticking me over.
Well, once Lamar stands up there.
Yeah, that'll
and
leave
I'll-
it out.
and I'll
Yeah.
field this.
Lamar's a pretty big guy too.
Where's Linda?
Okay, y'all take a big step this way, please. All right. Okay. 1, 2, 3. All right, let's go.
Okay, that's great. All right, Superintendent, I believe you have one other presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we have our once a month honoring and recognizing different departments across the school district. And today we have Academic and Student Services who's with us today. And if you think about the depth and the breadth of what happens in Academic and Student Services, it is wide and it is complex. And you think about the school performance plan process, and when you hear those words, many don't understand all that goes into an entire school performance plan process, which is annual. Then you look at professional learning and the planning of that. You look at going to schools and meeting with administrators and teachers. You look at the coaching. You look at the discipline process and all that occurs. You look at the mental health that occurs not only with our mental health counselors, but in everything behind the scenes with that. You look at our new program for mental health with our students, and just so many different things that are happening across this district that would not happen if it was not for Academic and Student Services. So with that said, and I'm just going to say a few brief things, and the leader of this group has some more things to say, so Ms. Lightbourne, if you'd come forward.
Good morning. Just an incredible group. They work so hard. They work long hours. They do anything that needs to be done. Some high stress with discipline and all the things that go along with that. ESE, Mr. Chambers talked about the SPP process and coaching and all of the I always say my girls, all of my girls and Brian are out in schools, working with principals, working with teachers, just trying to get it done. So I feel like, and I know the other departments are important, everybody's important, but these folks are the backbone of what we do. And it's not easy, but they come to work every day with a smile and we just get the job done. So I'm proud to be the leader of them, I guess you could say, but I am very proud of all of them and everything that they do.
Wonderful, okay.
And as I'm looking at faces, so I think this is important. So you look at what happens with federal programs, especially where some of it was interesting this year and keeping up with that.
Yeah.
You look at the parent trainings that we're doing now, and you look at different trainings for employees that we're doing now. You look at compliance with ESE that we used to have several reports where we needed to become more compliant, and now we have several reports where we're just compliant. Just the work and the accolades could go on and on with this group from ELL, and it just continues to go on and on. But just a consummate group of professionals and led by a true professional that I absolutely value deeply, and each and every one of them as well. So I just want to say thank you for all that you all do. And looking at just a few of those smiles, it's hard to always have those smiles in some of your roles, but you guys do it with grace, and it's not easy all the time to keep that smile, and yet you do. So just appreciate all you do, and CTE being a newcomer to this group and a true flagship for this school district as well. So thank you for what you do.
All right, that's great. Board members, let's give them a hand. All right. Thank you so much.
Can I make a comment?
Certainly.
So, first of all, congratulations and thank you to all of you. I have had interactions with most of you, not all of you, but I would just say that because our superintendent gives this board a little latitude to directly contact people in their roles instead of necessarily going straight through him, I will just say that I know, Ms. Lamb, I probably have emailed you and texted you a lot over the last couple of months, but knowing that we can have that direct talk with them helps rectify a situation a lot quicker. And everybody that I've contacted along the lines here, you know, directly, always very professional, helps me get the answers that I need, but also, you know, when we do get a parent concern or anything like that, or a student concern, it's taken care, I know it's taken care of. So appreciate all of you and what you do. And Brian, you know, we appreciate you back there, even though you're the lone guy back there, but that's okay. You do a great job back there, sir. So.
Yeah. Other comments, board members? I think we all appreciate you so very much and appreciate what you do every day, your professionalism, but also your personal touch with each of us and working with all the things you have to. So again, thank you so much from the board. Okay, all right. Okay, so moving on to section 4, administrative personnel appointments. We deleted 4.1, the appointment of the principal at Northwood Elementary School. All right, moving on to 4.2, appointment of director, human resources, recommended by the superintendent. 4.3, appointment of program director, facilities, recommended by the superintendent. Okay, that takes us to 5, that's public comment on agenda items. 5.1, members of the public desiring to address the school board regarding agenda items only. We don't have anybody this morning, do we, Mary? Okay, we'll move forward to 6, committee and staff reports. 6.1, Destin High School, Inc., basic financial statements and supplementary information for the year ended June 30th, 2025, presented by Ms. Julie Perry, Chief Financial Officer. Okay, moving on to the number 7.
Madam Chair.
Oh.
I would like to just point out for members of the public that this item has been placed on the agenda for informational purposes, and that should they be so interested, they might take a look at the information provided.
Thank you, Dr. White.
And I would just add, as it pertains to this item, myself and Mrs. Perry have been in communication, and we've taken all proper steps.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, moving on to 7, the consent agenda. First, we'll have 7.1, the approval of the consent agenda. 7.2, approval of the minutes of the student disciplinary hearing of October 27th, 2025. The minutes of the workshop meeting of October 27th, 25. The minutes of the regular meeting of October 27th, 25, recommended by the superintendent. 7.3, appropriation of District 2 School Board member capital outlay funds to Elliott Point Elementary School for academic team buzzers in the amount of $762, presented by Mr. Destin.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to say that this is one of the first elementary schools that's going to have an academic team, and that Scott Nuss over there at Elliott Point is doing a great job, and it is a privilege for me to be able to buy them a few buzzers so that they can compete. I'd like to see this proliferated at the elementary level because we've got some really smart kids, and putting them in Quiz Bowl early start that process where they start winning some big championships when they get to middle school and high school.
Great. All right. 7.4, appropriation of District 2 School Board member capital outlay funds to Elliott Point Elementary School for archery targets in the amount of $1,770, presented by Mr. Destin. I know they have big archery over there. Yeah. 7.5, appropriation of District 4 School Board member capital outlay funds to Northwood Elementary School for cafeteria paint in the amount of $8,089.20, presented by Mr. Bryant. 7.6, appropriation of District 4 School Board member capital outlay funds to Davidson Middle School for gym wall padding in the amount of $2,344.13, presented by Mr. Bryant. 7.7, appropriation of District 5 School Board member capital outlay funds to Eglin Elementary School for clear touch panels in the amount of $18,026.14, presented by Mr. Heinley. 7.8, appropriation of District 5 School Board member capital outlay funds to Lewis School for risers in the amount of $12,756.83, presented by Mr. Heinley. 7.9, appropriation of District 5 School Board Member Capital Outlay Funds to Lewis School for Clear Touch panels in the amount of $586.01, presented by Mr. Heinley.
Madam Chair.
Uh-huh.
Just wanted to say, if that caught your eye, $586 is pretty cheap for clear touches, right?
Yeah, yeah.
No, there was an error in the first one that was approved, and so this
Okay.
is just an add-on.
So basically, it's an amendment.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
okay. Yeah, that's pretty. Yeah. Okay. All right, 7.10, invoices to be approved for payment presented by Ms. Perry, Chief Financial Officer, and recommended by the superintendent. 7.11, request to close current bank account with PNC Bank and open a new account at Service First Bank, presented by Ms. Perry, Chief Financial Officer, and recommended by the superintendent. 7.12, school donations, presented by Ms. Perry, Chief Financial Officer.
You waiting for my remarks?
Yep, I'm ready. What we got?
So we're currently, for the year, $277,909.16. And we had two big hits this past one, 10,000 each. One was anonymous, and it was for band instruments at Niceville High School. Another 10,000 from Margaret Finkel Foundation for the Principal's Discretionary and Growth House. It's for Silver Sand School. So
Perfect.
it's awesome.
We certainly do appreciate all the donations we get. All right,
Madam
okay, I'm
Chair,
sorry.
if you don't mind, on that topic, so we do see that folks give donations all the time to the school district. We're so appreciative, but also just want to say, Mr. Destin, you know, as you go around and offering for our schools, fish fries, also just the snow cones, and just what a difference that is making also just to staff and to schools. So just appreciate that.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you. Yes. Okay, 7.13, addendum to agreement between the School Board of Okaloosa County, Florida, and KEV or KEV Group, Inc., presented by Julie Perry, Chief Financial Officer, approved by the superintendent. 7.14, tag-on bid purchase over 50,000 Southeast Office Products and Paper, presented by Vince Wyndham, Program Director, Purchasing. 7.15, tag-on bid purchase over 50,000 Playmore Recreational Products, presented by Mr. Wyndham, Program Director for Purchasing. 7.16, Secondary Workforce Development Capitalization Incentive Program, CAP grant for fiscal year 25-26, presented by Jennifer Beasley, Program Director, Career and Technical Education. 7.17, amendment to agreement with Early Learning Coalition as related to the TAP program, presented by Rebecca Heald, Specialist, Student Services, and recommended by the superintendent. All right, moving to 8, Superintendent's Human Resources Recommendations. 8.1 is for information only, employees on administrative leave, presented by Dr. Hale. 8.2, cleared certification requirements and issuance of contracts for the 25-26 school year, presented by Sharon Duran, Program Director, Professional Services. 8.3, out-of-field report for 25-26 school year, presented by Ms. Duran, Program Director, Professional Services. 8.4, position allocations, Pineview School Assistant Principal and Secretary, presented by Ms. Perry, Chief Financial Officer, and recommended by the superintendent. 8.5, employment separations, presented by Dr. Hale, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources. 8.6, personnel recommendations, presented by Dr. Hale, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources. 8.7, employee transfers, presented by Dr. Hale, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources. 8.8, employee suspension, presented by Dr. Hale, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources. 8.9, reinstatement, reimbursement of sick leave due to line of duty illness, injury, medical examination, presented by Dr. Hale. 8.10, leave without pay, presented by Dr. Hale. At this time, we have nothing on the discussion agenda.
Madam Chair, might I just add
Okay.
that all of these items are, as we know, and as the agenda shows, are all recommended by Superintendent Chambers.
Yes.
And I just want to say that if they weren't, I wouldn't vote for it. So just wanted to make that remark so the public would know.
Thank you. Okay, so 9, we have nothing on the discussion agenda at this time. We move to 10, Construction Program Owners Representative Business. And we have Mr. Heinley, who is also selected to retain this position in the next year. Mr. Heinley?
Okay, my first act as a continuance is we're going to cancel our construction meeting today. No, we
Okay.
actually are, because we have a lot of people out that are conducive to getting decisions made. So we won't have another report till the first one, since this is because of Thanksgiving. In December, we'll have the report.
Okay.
But
Yep.
we're not stopping construction. So in fact, a lot will happen between now and December because of the Thanksgiving break. So they'll actually ramp it up a little bit.
Great.
So,
Okay.
so Madam Chair, if it would be all right, since Mr. Heinley has said that they're not going to have an update tonight, and we are voting on furniture for the OTC North Campus, would it be, could you give us a little update on the campus? Is it looking like we're still a go for the fall semester next year?
Everything is on schedule right now.
I mean, I see we're voting on furniture, so that tells me that
Very, that's towards the end.
that's a
Yes,
good
absolutely.
thing, so.
Okay, any other questions about construction? Thank you, Mr. Heinley. All right, 11, Attorney's Business. Mr.
No
Attorney?
report this morning.
Okay, so that's, all right, 11.1, all right. 12, we get to the Superintendent's Business. 12.1, out-of-state student trip requests and other things that you might want to bring to us. Mr. Chambers?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I will say we do have a few things this morning, so you might want to buckle.
Sit back and,
But I do want to first start off by saying my thank you to Dr. White. As serving as the school board chair, and as Mr. Bryant said, multiple times being a school board chair during my tenure here in Okaloosa County. And I just want to say, just for Dr. White, I could remember being a student out of college, driving up to his school over at Plu and sitting down with him, trying to get a job at Plu Elementary. And I ended up at Ruckle, but he was going to hire me. But I say all that to say, a long history with Dr. White, and someone who has been an amazing educator, principal, school board member, and just the way that you've conducted yourself as school board chair and school board member is something that we can all strive to be. And I just appreciate the steady leadership through good times and through tough times. So just from this superintendent, just appreciate all that you do. And I do want to say to Ms. Ivanchek, as our new school board chair, extremely proud. And I know that you're going to do an outstanding job, and just looking forward to your leadership and to our conversations. And I know that we're in good hands as well.
thank you, sir, and I appreciate the confidence in this board.
Absolutely. Do want to say, as you know, Veterans Day will be tomorrow, but last week we had a number of Veterans Day presentations across the school districts, from elementaries all the way up to high school. And I do want to say I was very proud to be over at Ruckle Middle School. And one, because we were honoring our veterans, and to watch the way that the students at Ruckle and across the school district honor our veterans, but two, because my father was the guest speaker. And I'll say my father's 83 years old now, and he was in the military for 33 years, and he would say some odd days, some odd hours. Then over a decade at Fort Walton Beach High School as the junior ROTC instructor there. So over 43 years, and probably 44 some odd years. So his time in the military, more than many folks have been alive in this room. So just was very appreciative to hear the words and his challenge to the students to thank folks for their service, to go back home and talk to their parents about thanking folks for their service. And it just also made me reflect that whether it was at Riverside Elementary, whether it was at Antioch, whether it was a Fort Walton Beach High School assembly, whether it was watching the different ROTC programs after school represent Veterans Day. And it happens all across the district, but this doesn't happen all across the country, where schools pause and give thanks to our veterans and to our military. So I was just extremely proud and reflective on last week, and then of course as we go into tomorrow as well. Do want to say that we do have an Okaloosa County bus driver job fair. And as you know, we're always striving to hire buses. I believe that'll be this upcoming Saturday, led by Dr. Hale and his group. So I just appreciate them continuing to be proactive in hiring. And as you know, we do ed support hiring fairs, we do teacher hiring fairs, but I just appreciate that it's not just a onesie. They literally come back and then get specific in trying to do this. So just thank you for that, that leadership, and continue to try to get the best working with us. We do have some Sunshine State scholars that will represent us across the state, and they'll go down to Orlando later this year. We do have 2 students and 1 alternate. We do have a Penelope Gordon from Fort Walton Beach High School, and we do have an Emma Michael from Niceville High School, and then we do have an alternate, Mrs. White from Crestview High School. And the Sunshine State Scholars Program recognizes Florida's top 11th grade students as it pertains to STEM. And again, they'll go down to Orlando and represent us well. So just very proud of these students. Later on today, before the nightly school board meeting, we'll be going over to Edge and we'll celebrate their 100 years. And I'll just say for me, again, on the personal side, it's exciting because both of my kids started at Edge as kindergarten students, coming home with all that nice sand in their shoes. But over 20 years of being associated with Edge, but then consider another 79 years in terms of turning 100. And the amazing teachers and staff and leadership that they've had at Edge over the years, and led this year by Ms. Curley, who's doing a fantastic job. I think she's put this thing out on Indeed. She's invited everybody, so so just absolutely fantastic. Just want to say we'll see everybody there this evening, and then want to thank Mrs. Card for her help getting our initiative out with the Thanksgiving meals, as well as the Angel Tree with the Okaloosa County Sheriff's Office. But over 200 families will receive meals for Thanksgiving, and they'll also receive a laptop this year. So the laptop is an addition this year. And just could not be more grateful. And you think about how this community supports us. One of the things we talk about is community engagement as one of our pillars. But you look at Jacobs Titan, Legacy Vacations, Eglin Federal Credit Union, Florida Power and Light, Okaloosa Gas, Bit Wizards, Talking Parents, Forest Heights Baptist Church, all these different groups coming together to support our students in these programs. And that's just a few to name. So just so incredibly grateful. So that's a few highlights. Now I want to get even more serious, all right? So I want to go to our legislative priorities. And I'd like to start off with Dr. Hale kind of giving us a understanding of how we got here, and then I'm going to go through legislative priorities, and then he'll tag team a couple with me as well.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Happy Monday. I like to tell people this is my favorite week of the year because it's only one day long before we have another weekend behind us. So looking forward to that, but I'm very, very excited to talk about our legislative priorities for this year. But before I do, I just wanted to make mention of the successes that we were able to see last year with the support of this school board and the school district staff. And with the help of Oak Strategies, we were able to get a lot done legislatively on behalf of the students of the state of Florida and the employees of the state of Florida last year. I think that if you go back and you look at some of the things that were actually shepherded through the legislative process and got to the finish line last year, you're going to see a lot of that aligned with the priorities that we had as a school district. There's still work to be done. The process that we go through each year for this is we look at what we did last year, what we were looking at as a priority collectively after we talk to principals, after we talk to teachers, after we talk to departments and different folks and different constituents around the community about what can we do differently, or what do we need from the legislature in order to do what we do at the level that we want to do it. We want to remain a high-achieving school district. We want to lean on the fact that our not only our students and our families, but our teachers and our staff are second to none. And we want the best for them, not only with what we can provide locally, but what the state can do legislatively. That's our intent. So we look at the different things that our stakeholders are telling us. We talk around the senior staff table, and then we formulate a list of things that we think need to be addressed, things that we've struggled with, or things that we think should be improved through the legislative process. And of course, we include the school board with that. Once we align these priorities, once we make sure that we are all on the same page with what we think is best on behalf of the school district, then we get back together with our Oak Strategies group, and then they facilitate face-to-face meetings and different type of interactions with the actual legislators and their staffs that can get this across the goal line, so to speak. And that's what we're in here to do today. We're to introduce the legislative priorities that we had determined for 25-26 school year would best benefit not only the Okaloosa County School District and our students, but our staff, and in fact, legislative change that can impact the state of Florida. I would like to tell you that we have also spoken with the FADS group to make sure that some of the things that we are looking at are in alignment with statewide priorities with that group. And I'm also proud to say that we have a very close relationship with our local teachers groups, and that we have also spoken with them about their priorities. And I think that we are great partners continuing as we move forward. So that's kind of what we are here to do today in terms of the process. Now, I gave you a packet as we were getting started, and it's not, the packet is not where we want to focus. There's a piece of paper on top of the packet that is actually one of the pages inside it. That is what we call the one-pager that we provide to the actual decision makers, and then we hand the packets to their staff, so that they can see where the granular piece is, what the detail is, and that's what you have as well. But we're going to focus today on the actual one-sheeter as we go through this. Once we have this discussion with you all, then we'll start working with the Oak Strategies group to then move our platform forward in front of the legislators. Anything you want to add to that before we get started? All right, so we'll just jump right into it with the terms of the presentation. You can see that the first thing is education funding and resource allocation.
So what you have in front of you, and I just want to say that Dr. Hale's done a great job of working with me, working with staff, like he said, and putting all of this together. And this has taken several months to get to where we are today. The legislative session will be early this year, which will be a benefit for us. We will meet in Tallahassee with Senator Gates, Senator Trumbull, Representative Maney, and others. We'll also meet with the Senate President and others. And that's also a great piece with Oak Strategies, helping us make sure that we align all these meetings up. We do have this categorized in educational funding and resource allocation, school safety, student support services and student mental health, reduce regulation in public schools, and workforce recruitment and retention, in those 5 categories. I want to say from the beginning, some folks could look at this and go, well, what about? You can't get everything on a legislative priority agenda. If you put everything in there, you're likely not going to get anything. So we want to be very specific in what we're going for. Normally, I don't read these things word for word, but in these, I am going to read word for word, and then I'm going to expound as well. So first of all, when you look at the education funding and resource allocation, one of the things we want to focus on is the BSA, and that's the base student allocation, as you know. And the base student allocation should be adjusted annually to reflect inflation and the true cost of doing business, ensuring districts can meet rising operational demands. You think about this last year, we received $41 increase. So let's go to the previous year. The previous year it was 191. Okay, the 191 you can say, okay, not bad, but I'm gonna give you some figures here in a second. But $41 of an increase to the base student allocation, I would say was very, very difficult for school districts across the state of Florida. When you look at retirement in terms of the amount per student, retirement alone is $33. Insurance, about $8. A 1% raise, which we all know is not nearly enough, is $67. So just that right there is $108 to look at retirement, which we do not control, that goes up every year, insurance, which we control to an extent, and then looking at, you have to do a raise based on the governor's agenda, but to only do a 1% raise, which again, we would like to do more, but that totals to $108. So if the base student allocation was $108, it would allow for that. The base student allocation was $41.62. And that, quite frankly, that's just not enough. Then you come down, and let's just say that it was a 3% raise, which would be much better than a 1% raise, but we'd like to do even more. But a 3% raise would be $202 in the base student allocation. So that would bring those other totals to $243 increase to the base student allocation. And when I'm talking about these increases that you see here, this doesn't account for everything else, but just in these areas, that would equate to about $243. And again, $41.62 was the increase in the base student allocation, which when Julie does her spreadsheets, especially over the last 5 years, it goes into a decrease. So in essence, we're going backwards. So that's just factual.
Superintendent.
Superintendent.
Madam Chair, would you take a question or a comment? Well, I guess I very much appreciate the numerical breakdown. In the old days, a long time ago, we used to say that when they met, if the BSA didn't increase by $200, then we were going to be in trouble. Well, now it sounds like $250. And I think that's the number that we should all remember as we head into the next legislative session, or I think as the numbers seem to indicate, and Mr. Heinley is the math guy and the numbers guy, it looks like that we may be in further regression.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, that's it. Thank you, Superintendent.
So I had a
Other
question.
comments? Okay.
So you said our BSA went up $41. What is our BSA as a whole? Is it 250? Was it 250 per student?
Ask that question again.
So you said that the BSA was we only increased $41. So what is the total BSA?
What's the actual number, Julie?
Yes, I'm getting it, I'm sorry.
It's into the thousands, but we'll get the exact number.
All right.
Well, and of course, that number varies. There is a basic BSA, but the amount per student varies depending upon cost factors and programs that they might be in.
BSA is $5,372.60.
So 5,300 and change. And what Dr. White just said is important, because not only is the base student allocation going down, the program cost factors are going down. And program cost factors go down if they say, you as a state are not spending as much. And of course, you're not spending as much because the base student allocation and the budgets are going down. But because of that, they then lower the program cost factors as well.
That's 22.
So that'll be a major piece of what we push for. I will say to this board, it's already been made clear last year, and it's been made clear this year, that in current thought, last year's budget, which was not good, will be better than this year's upcoming budget. And then the next year's budget after that, unless something changes, will be even more challenging. One thing that I am hopeful on is Senator Gates will be looking at the FEFP and that funding formula. And he is very, very knowledgeable of all of this. But I also understand that there's initiatives from state leadership as well. So he's only able to do what he can do, but if he's behind that, that could be something that could be good for the state of Florida. So just, I'm hopeful. But we are also preparing for what the path was set last year.
Madam Chair, I have one other question,
Certainly.
if you don't mind.
Yes.
Superintendent, I don't know, maybe you can make some inquiries if we don't know this yet, but because the legislature is meeting early, do we have cause to suspect that we may get our budget early?
So that is the timeline,
All right,
that should happen, but you know what last year's timeline looked like.
yeah, that's right.
And it wasn't an election year last year, so I think their priority will get it done in 60 days. So.
Madam Chair, I have another
Yeah.
comment.
Mr. Heinley?
On the BSA, in dealing with the legislatures, the best success I've had in the past is giving them everything that they can run through so they don't have to discover it themselves. So adjusted annually to reflect inflation, perfect. And the true cost of doing business. So the true cost of doing business, do we have a formula or a process, what that means? Because that's, you're gonna have to provide that to them.
So the answer is yes, not necessarily a formula, but what you will see in your back documents, Dr. Hale's done a good job of putting more information with each of these bullets.
Okay.
That he'll also give to staff, but also as it pertains to, that's why it's good to talk through this piece as well, as you talk to a formula, which I'm not sure there is one. However, if there is, we have Julie, so we'll sit with Julie as well and see how we can maybe even spell that out in even greater detail.
The more detail, the more you can spell out to them, the more they can run with it.
And if I might, Mr. Superintendent, there's one piece that's coming up in just a little bit that just focuses on one particular area of the cost of doing business. And so to break down every single line item in the budget would be virtually impossible, but we've given specific examples. For instance, you're going to see about textbook adoption coming up. The cost of doing business, just simply with regard to that one item, is going to be a real eye-opener for those legislators.
And that's because you mean the cost of the textbooks far exceeds the allocation provided by the state.
Yes,
Is that
sir, and
right?
that's coming very specifically in just a few slides.
I see Ms. Perry coming up.
As far as coming up with just one cost of doing business, all the school districts can handle might have different challenges with their students, so they may have different things that go into their cost of doing business. So I think that instead it's a better metric for them to see what that cost of increase is. You see what I mean with that, Mr. Chambers?
I do, but when you're trying to pass a state, at the state level, it's gotta be spelled out and clear. So if something's variable between districts, that won't be in there. But, whatever you can spell out for them, then they're not gonna have to learn it and discover it themselves.
Well, and I agree, Mr. Hindley, and I think the textbook case that we just discussed would be a prime example that the allocation that's provided does not meet the cost of doing business of buying a textbook for every child.
Perfect example.
This next one really gets me going. It really gets me going. And this is longer, and again, I normally don't read, but I want every word priority to be understood. And then we'll do some explaining as well. The Family Empowerment Scholarship funding should be separated, and I cannot stress that enough, should be separated from the district budgets in the same manner as the Senate's 2024 proposal to protect the financial integrity of public education. Currently, FES funds are pulled entirely from the district's operating budget, even though they are allocated through both the base student allocation and categoricals. So if you were to stop right there just for a second, that's big when it's a part of those. Creating a disproportionate strain on operational resources.
Okay, could you back up on that categorical? I understand the BSA, but what categoricals are we talking?
So if you look at textbooks or you
Okay.
look at different things like
So
that,
they pull it up.
funnels through those areas as well.
Okay, thank you.
While the state-funded discretionary supplement, which we receive, helps offset this reduction, it does not fully cover, and I would even say come close to fully cover, the loss of funds previously used to support core operational needs such as staffing, insurance, retirement, instructional materials, and school safety. Without adjustments to the funding model, districts face growing shortfalls to threaten their ability to meet basic obligations and maintain stable operations. Now, there's a lot of words there. When we said, well, maybe we should go shorter, ultimately want those words there because they're all important. So let's talk specifically what that means, however. So we look at, if we go back several years, Family Empowerment Scholarship students, we were less than 1,000, and today, with projections, we sit at 2,935. When you look at the actual participants this year, we're at 3,253. Of those 3,253, 1,930 have never attended Okaloosa County schools. Those 1,930 students equates to about $17 million. So in essence, we're funding private school education to the tune of $17 million. The total allocation that will come into our schools, and you heard the process, within that base student allocation, within categoricals, it comes on in, and then it flows back out. The total number will be about 27 million. That does not include PEP scholarship students, which is a different group of students as well. So that's 27 million, and let's just say that 27 million was funded outside of the school districts. So Family Empowerment Scholarship became its own school district across the state of Florida. So now that 27 million never comes to us. It doesn't look like it's a part of our allocation. So when folks say you went up $5 million, yeah, we went up $5 million, but that includes the Family Empowerment Scholarship. It includes charter school allocation. So no, we did not go up $5 million with those pieces in there. So if that was funded in and of itself, that's one of the asks. But then the other ask is, don't just take the 27 million and move it over here, still fund us like we used to be able to meet those costs that we need. So if you look at the 27 million, we might not get all 27 million back. But if you look at the 1,930 students that are private school kids that never attended Okaloosa County schools, that's 17 million. Imagine if we had that back. Julie would sleep at night, right? Even beyond the 1,930 students, now there's the remaining students that gets to the 3,200. Of those remaining kids, not all of those kids attended Okaloosa schools for 2 years, 3 years. Some of them attended a year or less. Some of them came in, they started, then they left. And again, I'd always say this is not about whining. This is a system that we're in, and this is the system, and I'm fine with it. But the funding model, in my opinion, has to be adjusted in order for school districts across the state of Florida to continue doing business. Without it being adjusted, there's going to be several hard decisions that will have to be made here in Okaloosa County, as well as the other 66 districts.
So, Madam Chair, so is the idea to get them to reimburse us for the amount of the Family Empower scholarships? I mean, we have to give that number to them? I mean, what's the infrastructure of that?
The idea would be that they just fund the Family Empowerment Scholarship Program outside of the FEFP, the funding model.
So we would have to give them that data.
They have the data.
They have the data.
They have all the data and more. So they have everything they need. Students sign up through a scholarship application, so to speak, with the state, so they know exactly who they are. It would just be formulating a school district of just Family Empowerment Scholarship students. And that funding goes there. Now my opinion on funding private school students, that's a whole nother matter in and of itself. But if we're gonna do it, and we are, then let's fund it outside of our school system. Again, but then there's a $27 million going out. The goal would be that $27 million doesn't just go, that there would be some money that then is supplemented back here that we used to receive.
So, in theory, or their basis of this is these people pay property taxes in our district, and you're refunding that, you're giving them that property tax back, that they're not putting in public, they're going to other sources of education. I mean, that's the whole basis of the Family Empowerment Scholarship, is that correct?
That's their argument.
Well, I think there are probably a number of arguments why various leadership at various levels have found this to be something that they have promoted. But the question I'd like to ask, Madam Chair, if the superintendent would, is this going, do you feel like this is going to be a priority by other school districts or the Superintendent's Association and the School Boards Association? Are we gonna have teammates on this?
Absolutely, we will have teammates from all school districts across the state. And I say that I haven't seen their priorities, but I've been in the meetings where we talk about it.
Okay.
I know FADS, this is a
Okay.
priority.
Okay.
Believe it's a.
And FSBA will be voting on this in December, but this is a
How
priority.
about FEA? You guys on board? Okay, good. All right.
If I could ask just a comment here, so, again, I'm all about parent choice. I'm all about, parents doing what they think is right here. I think what it comes down to, and this is what's really hard, is the accountability piece on it, where there's really no accountability piece after they receive that money. And I think that's been the struggle, is how do we account to that, or how do we get that?
So I want to go back and I'm going to come back to that statement. So I too have no problem with parental choice. And so anyone who's listening, I've seen some things on Facebook. It has nothing to do with parental choice. I'm all about it. Support that. Fund family empowerment scholarships outside of the school district funding. And then fund us with the base student allocation, with the program cost factors and other things, so that school districts have the ability to run their school districts and do a great job for our students. Now, there will be some who will say, make do with what you have. And that's exactly what we're doing. That's exactly what we're doing. However, this new model, I know, is something that's being looked at, even at the state level. So we'll see what happens. But this is our belief here in Okaloosa County, and I think it's a belief across the state and with different organizations. When it comes to the accountability piece, the DOE has put an accountability measure in this year. So this year, there's an accountability. So every month, we get a list of students who are Family Empowerment Scholarship students. Mr. Spolsky and his group then look at those numbers, specifically Ms. Meserve looks at those numbers. When I say numbers, those students, name by name. Are any of those students in our schools? Yes, 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 no, no, no. Any yeses? Those students' names are submitted to the state. Then those students, then their families are contacted, and either your scholarship is then removed, or if you want to stay in the school district, your scholarship is removed. If you want to keep the scholarship, then you got to go outside of the school district, because if not, you're double dipping, so to speak. And when you're double dipping, we're not receiving any funding.
That was our concern.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I hope, I echo Board Member White's concern about accountability. And I want to make sure that if we have, I don't want us to, I'm in a complete agreement with Mr. Chambers, the priority of the FES funding, how it needs to be separated, but I've been exposed to state and federal politics in my life for so long. I know that if we ask for something that will cost the state themselves too much, that it's probably perhaps a little bit unlikely. So I want to make sure that we're also at least encouraging an accountability component, because if the system is going to likely stay the system, at least let's shoot for an accountability component that makes sure that there is a ditty double dipping. That might be something that we can control, because my worry right now is I can see why the state loves smearing all the money together and only giving us a portion of what it really costs to fund these scholarships, because if you actually separated it for 67 counties, they could blow a gigantic $500 million hole in their own budget. And they go, we like kind of smearing that whole thing down on the state and local taxpayers, and we'll let them figure it out. I worry that there won't be some sort of magnanimous opening of their eyes. So if that's, I think we need to advocate for that. I hope that they see the light. The traditional public schools are left probably close to 80, 90% of the responsibility of making sure that the majority of the students that live in the state of Florida receive an education, and then that should be their priority. We can't be indifferent to making sure that that system does not fail. But to separate it would be such, for all 67 counties, that's a big number for them.
Well, and along those lines, Mr. Destin, Madam Chair, when I read in here as the same manner as the Senate's 2024 proposal, I just wanted a little more clarity on that particular item. So the Senate has already, if I'm interpreting this correctly, so last year, the Florida Senate already had a proposal to separate these funds? And if they did, I'm curious about that. Did that proposal pass in the Senate, but was rejected by the House? Is that, could you give me that synopsis?
Yes, there were two budgets.
Two bills, okay.
The House budget was just the same way they always do it.
Okay.
In the Senate, what they did was they said, school district, FTE, school district allocations.
Okay.
And then they had a line for FES, FTE,
All right.
FES allocation.
So they did separate it? Okay, so that, Mr. Destin, gives me some encouragement.
That's hope. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, so, and I think it helps us and our advocates direct our communications where they need to go. Encourage the Senate and let the House know that we really like the Senate's version.
And to Mr. Destin's point, I don't necessarily agree with you. Excuse me, I don't necessarily disagree with you.
That's okay.
I meant disagree.
Yeah.
Because I fully understand there's not this $2 billion, $3 billion that's sitting over here that's now going to plug all the holes. But I'll take, for the state, I'll take 500 million, I'll take $1 billion. But I think the other piece of this is just the awareness piece and making sure that citizens understand exactly how this is funded. And I will say, you know, we're lucky here that we have Senator Gates, we have Senator Trumbull, our Representative Maney, and our representatives in this area having these conversations. They support us, and I really appreciate that. Even members of the DOE, even the governor's office. I just hope that we go somewhere with it, however. Hope we go somewhere with it.
I'd like to, if you don't mind.
Please.
So what you were saying is about the public, and that's what I was sitting here thinking is, just recently, a couple days ago, I was asked about the article that came out about the FTE, the shortage and so forth, and was asked about that. And this was with a group of citizens that I typically feel stay very apprised on what's happening and that kind of thing. They had no idea about this family empowerment scholarship and the implications on our school district. And when I explained it, they were gasping. And so I think it's important, not only, of course, we're going to be talking to our legislative group, but I think our citizens need to understand so that, I'm trying to put this in, so that when things are rough and we have to make those decisions, you know, you bring to us some tough decisions, that the public understands what we're up against. That it's not just, you know, we're being the bad guys. And again, we're not whining. We're going to do what we can, the best we can do. But I do think our citizens need to understand these objectives here and priorities so that they can have a voice. You know, that they're not just representing us, they're representing all the citizens. And I think they might have something to say to their elected officials if they knew this information. And I'll give it that this is a complex, school district funding is complex. And so like you just said, they gave us this and they took this, and that's hard, you know, to understand. But I do think we can encapsulate this so that the citizens out there can understand that the way this is funded now, like you started out with saying, is something we're not going to be able to sustain at the way we are sustaining schools now. Am I correct in pretty much making that statement, sir?
Oh, you are correct. Without adjustments.
Right, yes.
So adjustments would have to be made, or will have to be made, in order to sustain this.
That's right, okay.
Particularly, Superintendent, just in my mind, if the shortfalls that are being projected for next year and the following year occur.
Very true. Just getting, as you know, just got back from a superintendent's meeting this last Thursday and Friday, and these are the discussions that are being had, not only in Okaloosa, just across the state. And when the Family Empowerment Scholarship system does not have a cap, like the other states do that are doing this program, there's a cap. So if there's not a cap,
You mean a wealth gap?
a cap of how many students can go
do.
into the program,
Just flat out.
correct? Because if there's no cap, then it makes what Mrs. Meserve does very, very difficult to say, this is our FTE projection
know.
next year.
So why didn't we add something like that in this particular bullet?
Well, that is a great question, Ms. Evancheck.
Well, I think the cap's gonna be it's gonna be a limit on parent choice. I don't see them doing that.
To Mrs. Evancheck's point, that might be something that we do add to this statement, however.
I'd support adding it.
Might I ask another question, Madam Chair? So we know our budget's been reduced, okay? And we anticipate reductions next year and then even further reductions following that. I know that you and your staff are tasked with providing a balanced budget. Maybe at another time, you might share with the board and the public what kinds of, for lack of a better word, I'll just say, what kinds of reductions we'll be looking at. And certainly, I would think that we would want to share those with our legislators so that they know the consequence of this loss of funding, however you want to say it, it's a loss of funding, and what we might be forced into so that everyone's well aware of where we're going, because by law, we all know we're required to have a balanced budget.
And I appreciate that statement. And again, just going back as recently as last Thursday, Friday, sitting in a meeting and talking about just enrollment across the state of Florida. Let's take FES out of the equation for a second. Cost of living impacts student enrollment. Birth rates across the state are impacting student enrollment. Those two factors there. Then you look at when new subdivisions are being built, and we say, okay, there's 1,000 houses that are being built. Statistically, every house, and it differs by apartment, single family, home, but statistically in Okaloosa, about 0.25 to 0.33 of a kid is associated with a home. And 0.25 to 0.33 of a kid is not just elementary. That's across the board, right? So those are things we have to look at as well. And so when you start looking at student enrollment across the state dropping and in Okaloosa County as well, then you have to start looking at the total enrollment in your schools. Look at the capacity in your schools, and then you have to start making some decisions accordingly. I will say to this board, as you know, we've been talking about enrollment, in essence, all semester. And we, as a senior staff, are looking at enrollment daily, but also looking at the totality of enrollment the last 10 years and how enrollment has dropped, and not only in Okaloosa, but then also looking at the next 10-year projection and what the north end looks like, what the south end looks like, and what the central end looks like. When you look at the 10-year projection, the north end goes up in enrollment, the south and the central goes down in enrollment, and down from where we already are.
And just in my mind, Superintendent, along those lines, and I know it's probably too early for this, but it seems like if our leadership understood the situation financially in our school district and what the consequences of that might be, that it might be enumerated in some way as to how we intend to deal with the shortfall, I think that might help them in calculating what they might do. I mean, often, you know, they hear that there's a budget shortfall, et cetera, but somehow, you know, maybe we find the money and we keep the wheels on. And if that's not going to be the case, I think out of a sense of fairness, we should let them know.
And to that point, we absolutely will let them know the impact to Okaloosa. Okay. Going to the next item is the textbook adoption. This one really gets me fired up. I can go back to 2012 when I was the assistant superintendent. In essence, the allocation was then what it is today. And our textbook, looking at the funding, fully fund textbook and instructional materials adoptions through the FEFP to match actual costs of the adoption. A dedicated allocation ensures compliance with state standards and guarantees student access to vetted, high-quality materials that reflect Florida's values. And then within this is a timeline as well. Right now, a textbook adoption, for example, the year we're currently in for next year, which is happening right now, will be ELA. And then, this might not be the exact order, but ELA, the next year math, the next year science, the next year social studies, in somewhat of that fashion. So we want to look at the timeline, structure adoption timelines to allow full implementation in one core subject before starting another. This supports instructional continuity and helps districts manage adoption allocations more effectively. So when you look at our textbook adoption, not including the charter schools, we get about $1.8 million for our textbook allocation, textbook adoption allocation. The textbook adoption range is about 3.6 million to about 6 million. So we're about to do an ELA adoption. It's gonna cost north of 5.5 billion. It'll probably cost closer to 6 million. 6 million minus 1.8 million, that's $4.2 million, if I'm doing my math correctly, that will come out of general dollars to do a textbook allocation. So back in the day, you could order hardback books that you could let stay with you for years. Now it's a consumable, and then there's software technology that comes with these books as well. So some say, well, just don't worry about the purchasing all of the books for students in terms of the consumables. Just maybe do a class set and then look at the technology versions of the textbooks. Well, the textbook companies take care of that as well. They make sure that that is a good, pretty penny as well. So to keep up with the adoption, we've been able to right now because of ESSER. Of course, ESSER's gone, but Julie did a great job with ESSER dollars, which allowed us to continue to do things with textbooks. But at this rate right now, you have to be able to take those 4 million, 3 million, 4 million out every year of general dollars in order to provide our teachers and our students exactly what they need to meet the level of rigor of these standards and these assessments.
Madam Chair, question. Where do they come up with the $1.8 million to our district? How do they validate that?
Ms. Berry?
And that was kind of on that too, is why do they think that covers it? I mean, why would they not fund it? That's,
For years and years and years, about $2.5 million textbook categorical allocation. The state, even though the textbooks were going up, the state did not raise the allocation, the total instructional materials for $2.5 million. Then they rolled it into the base student allocation. Well, what we could afford was to continue setting aside $2.5 million. The $2.5 million pays for textbook adoption, other textbook allocations, instructional materials, dual enrollment, science lab. So when you strip everything out, you end up with 1.8 that you can use for the adoption. And I'm just budgeting the same amount that they were allocating us before. And like I said, when we were saying it wasn't enough, the solution was put it in BSA.
Right, and so when you allocate those monies out to the schools, I mean, it's per student, right?
Yes, sir.
What's it, about $8? Kid?
Yeah.
Anybody think you can buy
Yeah.
a book for $8?
Yeah.
What we do is we allocate some of it to the schools to use because they have
Yeah.
things they have to use, and
Sure.
some of it we hold back
Oh, okay.
to save for the textbook allocation. And because we had 3 years worth of textbook allocations we could do with ESSER, we're gonna be
Yeah, so-
okay this
So that's
year.
why I had to
Next
use
year's gonna be the
popcorn
hard
money to
year.
buy textbooks. Okay, I get it.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
again, I don't think the public gets, knows that. I don't think they understand, and I think most people understand that basic supplies, textbooks and such, are basic to instruction. And I don't think they they don't know this information, that deficit in what's funded and what it really costs.
So several years ago, the cost per text per student was less than $100. Now it's at 200.
Got 185 for elementary, and secondary, we're still looking at around 100.
100 more.
Right, about 100, 150, depending on the selection.
So the costs are going up. Costs are going up.
So to my colleagues who serve in the private sector, when cost of goods go up, how do you pay for it?
Exactly.
And in this case, the cost of goods are going up, but we're still being asked with the same amount of money that we are given.
So
And
your
the only-
your priority for the legislative is stating you need to address this, bring it up to level, and then probably allow for an annual increase.
Yes, worst case scenario, which is why the timeline is there. If you're not gonna do anything to the allocation, then let's slow down the timeline. You can't do it back to back to back. But there's a cycle of every 5 years, which is why but we gotta look at the cycle. So if you just simply work on the timeline, we can help the budget even without addressing additional dollars. At least you wouldn't be going out of pocket 4 million or 3 million every year.
If they, slowed up that, when we had to get them, because they were required to get those. I mean, it's not like we just want to. We have stipulations that we have to get those new books.
That's right, and of course, and I understand, and I get it about extending the timeline, but that means a child's old textbook is just gonna get older, right, if we did that. We need more funding, that's the answer.
Right. And my comment to cost of goods just wasn't necessarily to textbook adoption. It was across the board. And the only way we can raise revenue is something we're not going to talk about, but, but we do have the authority to do that. But how can the state help us and it's properly public education. That's the bottom line, properly funded.
So then we move to school safety. And our priority here is to fully fund the Safe Schools program to support comprehensive campus security. This includes ensuring every school can implement a full-time school resource officer program, as well as cover associated infrastructure and operational safety costs, and provide stipends for individuals serving as trained school guardians. Looking at adequate sustained funding is essential to uphold Florida's commitment to safe, secure learning environments for all students and staff. So the Safe Schools allocation is about $2.76 million. School resource officer funding is about $8 million. So taking that 2.76, applying it all to the school resource officer program, which means you have to fund Salto locks with different dollars. You have to fund video cameras with different dollars. You have to fund the other safety measures that we can't talk about because we can't allow that to get out there with other dollars. So when you look at just the school resource officer program, so Okaloosa funds about $4.25 million of the total cost, and that total cost is $8.5 million. So we fund about $4.25 million from our state allocation, and then the other dollars that come out of general. And then we are blessed beyond measure that the Okaloosa County Commissioners fund the other $4.25 million. They too go through budgets, so it'll be interesting to see what happens next year with the Okaloosa County Commissioners' dollars. So, because they too are also going through budget constraints. But right now, every dollar of the school safety allocation goes to resource officers, and we have to fund other safety measures with different dollars.
And basically, if I get it right, we're splitting that between the county what the county commission gives us and then ours, so it's about 50-50.
50-50.
Yeah.
Well, and Madam Chair, I'll never forget when a former sheriff stood up in a public meeting and said, yep, we're at these schools and we protect these students and they're citizens too. And that rang very true to me. And I think we've been very blessed to have had our county commissioners to work with us and help us, not just with SROs, but I mean, one time when we were in dire financial straits, they even helped us fund our communication systems. So very, very grateful for that. And I suspect if they face the same kind of financial constraints that we're looking at, that they'll have to make adjustments. And I guess their contribution to this school district, I'm imagining must be programmed within their budget, that a certain amount of money to fund that has been programmed into their budget. And if they have to make adjustments for lack of funding, then that may have the same effect on their budget, that they have to reduce that programming. And that would be unfortunate because they are citizens. They're young, but they're citizens of the county.
Right. And if I can also, Madam Chair, if I can comment on school safety. And because this board was proactive during a time when we did have extra money coming in, we were able to be ahead of the game on the school hardening program. And we're thankful because of the leadership of the superintendent and this board, we were able to get that done. If we hadn't had that done, I mean, we'd be struggling even more so with the school safety piece. But it is, I do agree that thank you to the county commissioners, our sheriff, everybody involved. Like Dr. White said, these students are just as much citizens as everybody else that's paying taxes. So, you know, we're really thankful because across the state, not every school district has that luxury of having that relationship. So, and they are struggling with school safety. So,
Well, and so a lot of what you just heard was budget oriented. And again, there's more that you could put in there. I think we receive half of what is needed for transportation. Then you look at ESC, you could go there. And I say all this again to say, It's not about whining, but this is just where we are. And so when you have legislative priorities, you want to address certain things that could make the school district even stronger and the state of Florida even stronger. But when you look at the FES, that's now compounding all of that. Because if you take the FES out, this is still a challenge. But now you throw that on top, and now it's an avalanche, so to speak. So then we move to student support services and mental health. As you know, I think mental health is very, very important, to say the least. So we want to look at establish additional funding for board-certified behavior analysts and behavior interventionists to public schools without reducing funds in other areas to address behavioral challenges, foster a positive learning environment, and improve student academic and behavioral outcomes. This would mirror the legislators' acknowledgement and increase funding of mental health counselors. So you remember when that was an initiative? We brought this forward last year as one of the things that we wanted to look at as well. So we're going to bring this back. I think no one's surprised that student behaviors are different nowadays. And to be able to have these folks in schools working with our folks can be a difference maker. And then looking at the second piece here is the mental wellness is foundational to academic success. Without adequate access to services, students face barriers that disrupt learning and long-term achievement. Continued investment in systems aligned with Section 394, and you can see the rest of that statute, including mobile response teams and other community interventions, is critical for crisis stabilization and student engagement, directly improving educational outcomes. So this is our nod to continued support for youth services, not only here in Okaloosa, but across the state. Those are minimal. And so to be able to take a student who has some mental health needs and get them the help that they need, there's not a lot of those folks here, and thank goodness there are some here, but we need even more help for that. So this is our nod to continued support for that. The mobile response teams is a great resource that our schools can call. If we have a student who's exhibiting certain behaviors, they come and they assist, but sometimes that come might be right away, and sometimes that come might be, that's not coming right now. So it's just continued awareness there. As you know, we have Care Crew and other initiatives here that we're working on for mental health. So I just want to continue that emphasis. Then we get to teachers, and I'm going to ask Dr. ask Dr. Hale to take these next two. But when you look at certification requirements that's on teachers, and when you start stacking them, it's enormous. You look at all the additional things schools now have to teach, when we already have rigorous things that we have to teach, though they're important, but they stack on. So we want to look at that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chambers. So the first thing that you'll see up there under our reducing regulation is to expand deregulation, as has been the process in past legislative sessions, to give public schools flexibility comparable to charter and choice programs, to streamline oversight and compliance, to empower districts with comparable autonomy. Now, in your packet, you have kind of a breakdown of analysis of charter schools versus public schools and the things that public schools have to attend to, everything from mandates, budgetary, categorical, statutory requirements, and the like. But the way that I would like to describe it, I'm going to take a page out of my friend Mr. Strong's playbook when he says, the laws that govern public schools are like this, and the laws that govern charter schools are like this, and the laws that govern private schools and homeschool are like this. And that's a really nice representation of what we're asking for from the deregulation standpoint. We just want a levelized playing field with regard to decision-making for both the administrative leadership and the teachers in the classroom. And that's what that really boils down to.
Especially on the private school side, if they're going to be receiving funding.
Mm-hmm.
As far as streamlining teacher and administrative certification renewal requirements by removing burdensome mandates, while also eliminating ESOL, ESC, and educational leadership point requirements for roles where they are not relevant. One of the things that I want to specifically acknowledge is the legislature's innovation in past years on the recruitment side. They've done a lot of things that make obtaining certification much easier for first responders, for military community, and all the things that are really important for us. But what we also need to do is create some retention possibilities through easing off on some of these things that teachers that are already teaching in the classroom have to do to get renewed. One thing that we're recommending specifically is to either reduce the number of things that they're required to do. For instance, the reading renewal requirement that teachers have to have right now. Well, there used to be a reading test that you could take. Well, that's off the book. And now you have to take 5 competency courses just to get that renewed again. In addition to all the things that they're doing in the classroom, from lesson planning through assessment, that takes up the lion's share of their day, as it should, but now they have to attend to all these other continuing PD credits, ESOL, ESE points. Every teacher in the state of Florida has to take ESE professional development and then get points for that towards their certification, even if they're not ESE specialists. That's every teacher. They all have to do the same thing. And then there's more things for administrators as well, but there's just, over the last 5 or 6 years, been more and more renewal requirements placed on teachers, and we're trying to keep these teachers. We want them. We don't want them to just be overburdened. Their job's tough enough as it is.
And just to add to that, so when you look at getting ESE certification for teachers or ELL certification for teachers, all of that sounds good and is. But the point being, when everything is stacked, then it just becomes overwhelming.
And so, in keeping with the theme of noble pursuits and things that are really, really good but create difficulties inside our program, I'm going to refer you to the next paragraph, which says we'd like to reduce the regulation to support instructional focus and reduce compliance burdens on schools. We would request relief from the ad hoc instructional mandates that are outlined in Florida Statute 1003.42. While many required topics reflect important values, and they do, the statute has expanded to include numerous non-course specific mandates and one-time commemorative observances. And there's a lot of redundancy in some of these as well, I might add, that lack measurable outcomes, duplicate existing efforts, and divert time from core academic instruction. And I like to just read some of the things that we have to do besides what the state standards say. These are things that we are imposed, it's imposed on us to make sure we attend to these things outside our normal curricular standards. And like I said, these are all really good things, but this is just extra. Flag education, Holocaust Education Week, African American history, Asian American and Pacific Islander history, agricultural principles, effect of alcohol, drugs, and narcotics, kindness to animals, conservation of natural resources, health education, which includes injury prevention and safety, internet safety, nutrition, personal health, disease prevention, substance use and abuse, child sexual abuse, exploitation, human trafficking, teen dating, violence and abuse, sexual abstinence and teenage pregnancy, life skills and mental emotional health, including self-awareness and management, decision-making, resiliency, relationship and conflict resolution, respect for diverse viewpoints, career and employment skills, social media effects, Hispanic contributions, women's contributions, free enterprise systems, civic and character education, Medal of Honor Day instruction, Veterans Day and Memorial Day instruction, and more. And again, those are all good, and many of those are woven into state standards already. But to hold specific, documented, extra instruction into these areas, I mean, there's 179 instructional days. 179 instructional days.
And we're tested on the academic content.
Yes, sir. So any questions about that one?
So no question, Madam Chair, no question, but a comment. So reduce regulation in public schools. So I think we should go in knowing the correct terminology is not deregulation anymore, it's administrative efficiency.
Administrative efficiency.
So that will catch their attention. If dereg obviously caught everybody's attention and they didn't like dereg. So now they've changed it to administrative efficiency.
So wait, you're saying on that where it says expand deregulation, you want that changed to what?
No. I'm just
We'll
saying
use the
that
correct term.
we can't say deregulation because it will just. So we have to say administrative efficiency. That's what they're focused on. So if we say administrative efficiency, it's leading into deregulation, but they're not calling it deregulation. They're calling it administrative efficiency.
I understand exactly
just
what you're
go
saying.
with it.
I understand exactly what you're saying. So
Wow.
Just go with it.
that's on that one.
Okay,
Trust me on this one.
yeah, I got you.
Okay. And then the final slide in this presentation is still more workforce recruitment and retention. It is the Okaloosa County School District's opinion, and we would hope that you would support this as well, that if a teacher is highly effective in an area of content where they're out of field, that they have the 1-year limit to that out-of-field assignment waived. It just makes sense. Continuing exemption should depend on maintaining the rating. If you continue to be highly effective in a content area, that should be okay. Also, we're asking to reinstate middle school integrated curriculum certification and expand it to cover ESC teachers across middle and high school. This reduces the burden of earning multiple certifications for difficult to staff, self-contained ESC roles. We've spoken about this before, but in order to teach a self-contained classroom in the ESC environment, you have to maintain certification for every single thing that you would teach in there.
And pause there for a second, because I want you to, you don't have to say them all, but I want you to say them. So in the ESC realm, which is a hard-to-fill position, which is already hard enough to go to school, get the degree, do everything that you need to do to be qualified to teach, but then you need to,
So we'll take the high school, the secondary example as the most illustrative example. If you are teaching a self-contained ESC VE classroom, you have to maintain the ESC certification and English, science, math, social studies, the 4 content areas at minimum. And that's, if you have a student that's able to transition into an elective or into PE outside of that self-contained classroom, then you wouldn't have to get that one. But guess what? If they're in your classroom teaching that content as well, you'd have to have that as well. So it's just, there's any number of certifications that you might have to service the students in your class. Yes, sir.
I might want to overdwell on that.
I'm telling you, that's the most ridiculous
Well,
thing
I-
ever.
Yes, ma'am, and what I think that too many folks don't understand is that when you say they have to maintain certification in language arts, math, science, et cetera, that's not a simple matter. I mean, basically, we're saying that those people could teach any subject by certification in the school. But because they teach ESE, they have to have all of that. Whereas a language arts teacher might only have to be certified in language arts.
Yes, sir.
And that's an overwhelming demand, quite frankly. And I know it affects your ability to recruit folks to serve in that area. And I suspect, but I don't know, but I would imagine that it has something to do with your ability to retain folks once you get them in that position. So that's, we used to have the middle grade certification test, and teachers could take that test and they'd be certified to teach math or science or social studies in middle grades. And that made a lot of sense. Do we still have that option?
The option, if someone was teaching under that before the change made, and they continue to teach that up until this point, it still counts.
They're good,
But if they
okay.
separated from that at any point, it is now off the table, and there's no one new that can do that.
So how do they get certified in all those subjects?
They have to pay and pass each subject area exam in the content area.
That's another thing. These teachers have to pay for those tests, and so out of pocket, our district doesn't pay for that, and they have to go and do all these things. I mean, it is really,
Yeah, Madam
no
Chair, that
no
was-
wonder we're not getting anybody in.
I'll just tell you a secret. The high school math test and the high school science test, that's a tall order.
Yes, sir.
Even for those folks that are in those particular majors.
Yes, sir.
And so to take someone and say, well, we're glad you can teach ESE, but now you got to go take all these classes and pass all these tests is.
And to your
I
point,
don't
sir,
know.
what I would say, the 3 hardest things to to find as a former high school principal is an ESE teacher, a calculus teacher, or a chemistry teacher.
Math
Exactly.
and science, sure, of course.
If I could comment real quick, go ahead, Mr.
I was just gonna ask, what's the carrying cost per certification? The teacher, what are they expending themselves?
Oh, to take a test, I think it's $100 a test now, and I think the certification, just to recert itself, is $75. So the initial is gonna be $100 times every subject area exam, plus the general knowledge exam that you have to take as well, plus the $75 certification exam, and then the $75 every time you wanna recert.
So we could be, each teacher could be brushing up around close to $500.
Right,
Easy.
right, but think
That's a lot
about,
of money.
think about those folks that have a college major in those subjects. Well, now you start adding in time and cost associated with college courses.
Sure.
And so folks that haven't had those college courses, but yet they have to pass a test, the additional costs they may be having is they may be pursuing various preparatory programs in order to pass this test that people with academic degrees in those areas often take preparatory courses for too.
Yeah, because an ESC teacher, obviously, well, most of them probably don't have the mastery of, say, calculus, whatever it is, which is on that math test. So they're gonna have to go get a tutor or take courses just to get them able to go take the test. And that's a lot of money. That just doesn't make any kind of sense.
And then down the line, how often are they gonna use calculus in
Exactly.
the ESE class?
That's right.
And quite frankly, a lot of the coursework with the access courses in high school is not what I would call upper level high
No,
school
but
coursework.
still.
And so a lot of them just have to take the whatever the middle school equivalent would be to get them certified in middle school. So that is there. That's why we wanted to have the middle school, specifically the middle grades curriculum, that used to be the all-encompassing middle grades. That would actually extend up into most of the self-contained high school classes. One other thing that I would say before we move on and take any more comments or questions on that, but ESE is hard to hire. And once you find one that's good through the hiring process, you usually only get them for 1 year because they're out of field.
Yep.
So if we could just get that out of field requirement set aside, they maintain highly effective, and we have people in there that are getting the training along the way, that would also be a benefit in this category that we're talking about.
So
Madam
these
Chair.
last two go together. If we could get some of this regulation, I think that's gonna help our workforce recruitment and retention, if we can get some of these, changed. Yes, sir,
Madam
Mr.
Chair,
Hunt.
question for Dr. Hill. It'd be interesting to find a number that would be a fiscal impact to the district if we could repay the teachers' hard costs of certification. I don't know what that would be, but, I think that would be a benefit to the teachers. It's gonna be a cost to the district, there's no doubt, but that would also, relieve some of the pressure. But I don't know what numbers we're talking about, you'd have to run them. And maybe you start just in ESE alone. You say, if you are ECA, we will pay these back, just an idea.
Right, we can definitely put some of that together, just in terms of what our certifications are based on a 5-year renewal, because it has to be renewed every 5 years. We can certainly research some of that.
And not to belabor the point, but along with Mr. Heinley's question, this is just a question that I'm curious about, having ESE teachers and some other subject areas as well, has always been difficult, even to the point that the state of Florida would pay their tuition to go back to university or college to get the credentialing to teach. Do they still do that? Does anyone know? Maybe I'm seeing some shaking of the head, no.
I don't know that right now.
Yeah, so probably not, but I used to have to post it as an advertisement in the teacher's workroom that, hey, here's an opportunity, and they'll pay your way back to school. And,
Shortage area.
but now we're not doing that either, I guess. Okay.
So, Madam Chair, I do have one follow-up here, or one question. So the last 3 bullet points, the student support services, administrative efficiency, workforce recruitment, retention, that just applies to traditional public schools. Does that apply to charter schools? and other entities that might be taking taxpayer dollars.
Which specific, I'm sorry.
I'm just talking about just some of the things we're talking about here right now, as far as,
Well, okay, so I see what you're saying. If you refer to your analysis, your charter school versus public analysis, there's a lot of certification grace that they get in the charter schools. There's a lot of budgetary categorical grace. There's a lot of ways to do things that aren't necessarily limited by statute grace that they have. There's a lot of things that are, that's why we just want that
well,
levelization. as
and I
well.
knew that, and that's why and I agree with our chairperson here saying that, parents need to know, the people who have a vested interest in this need to know that traditional public schools are held to a different standard, and I'm okay with having a high standard, but everybody else should have a high standard too. And we don't get to pick and choose what children come to our school. And I'm not necessarily saying that all charter schools do that, but I'm just saying that, we have to play on this playing field here, and I think that would only be fair to everybody playing on that same.
And Mr. Bryant, I agree with you 1,000%, and I'm not gonna say this with any sense of levity, but I'll tell you what, an outstanding member of the legislature told me one time when I asked that question, can they not be held to the same standard? And the answer was, we would never do to them what we've done to you.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, and walking the halls of Tallahassee, I mean, we know it is a different standard. But if we want to be real here, about 92% of children in the state of Florida go to a traditional public school. Right. Some school districts have, they just have those, their public schools. They don't have charter schools or private schools. They have that. But, those of us that do have the competition out there, I always say I'm all about competition, but if you're going to compete, let's do it fairly, and let the results speak for themselves. And I would put our district up against any district out there as far as the charter schools and private schools that we provide a great service to our students out there.
I have another question on this certification. We get a list of people that were considered out of field. And actually, back when I was teaching, it's been a few years, it went to the parents from each school knew which teachers were teaching out of field, okay? So are these parents notified in charter schools that their teacher is considered out of field?
I would not be able to speak specifically to that because I don't know, but I would think that since they do not have specific governing requirements for being in field, that would probably not be the case.
There you go. And so, I remember that first year they came through with all the English teachers and we all had to get the ESOL, and I pitched a fit. Where's Jeff Palmer? Because he and I kind of got into it. I said, you're saying, you had to sign a thing saying you were out of field. And I just went crazy. I went, no, I am not out of field. I have a degree, I have this. And you may even remember, I kind of got a little radical on that. And I said, I'm not signing a piece of paper that said I don't have the credential to do my job. Because it's just, it's formality because of state. But, that means a lot to a lot of people that, that you have that credential, you earn that credential, and it goes out to the public of what that credential is, that you're doing your professional job. So we have to put that out from ours to let people know, to be aware. I don't know what they can do about it, but again, they don't have to have credentialed teachers in field teaching their kids. But I can guarantee you the public doesn't know that. And again, that goes back to that. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I just hope someone's watching this that realizes what we're telling them here.
I very much appreciate the passion, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. I have one more bullet to talk about, and I do believe this to be low-hanging fruit. I really do. They've made some adjustments with regard to FRS waiting periods and things like that, but teaching continues to be an area of shortage, just like law enforcement. And so we're recommending to remove the 6-month waiting period for FRS retirees to return to their education role, because that's what they've done for law enforcement. It would help address shortages, retain experienced educators, and support the school community. I mean, there's no sense in having vacancies that could be filled by professional educators.
Well, the fact that we did get it to 6 months says.
Yeah.
but-
That's right.
Yeah.
But, and see, the more you think about that, though, most of the retirements end in the summertime, because that's when they start, and so 6 months is a mid-year hire,
Yeah, that's, and yeah,
so.
that sets us up for not getting my,
So in all these areas, so we will, as shared, be speaking with our local legislators and others. I will say that some of these topics are lightning rods, but I think,
you think?
we would not be doing, in my mind, we would not be doing our job if we didn't advocate for these areas. So I think it's just, it's important. I think if history serves us well, our local legislators have really worked well with us. There's many things that we were able to get across the line and some that we were not. But some of those we'll bring back this year. But though we are pushing for these changes, I will say, again, I think we're blessed to have local legislators all the way up to the DOE and governor's office that works well with us. However, we don't necessarily get everything that we want, but we will continue to push with these entities, even if it takes this upcoming session, or even if it takes the next session. We'll continue to push for these things because I think it's important. I truly believe with every fiber of my being, there's nothing more important than public education. It is the equalizer that provides opportunities for those who want to earn it. And I think that's a good thing. So that's the legislative priorities.
Can I
Madam
just say
Chair,
one?
Madam Chair, one statement. I think it's a sign of sophistication when an organization can be proactive, because otherwise, if we didn't have someone doing that, we didn't have the Oaks, we're doing that, all we are is reacting to what the state mandates us to do, and some of those times they're unfunded mandates. And, and then all of a sudden we have to handle it. So being proactive is being responsible to our constituents. Highly, highly recommend that for any organization. Number two, I would assume we're going to get a result after the legislation. We're going to get a nice long brief of what we got and what we didn't get.
I watched it.
We, just like last year, we'll give a report. So.
But also, I was going to say, I know you have the Champions of Education group, and you're also, I know you've been out there, so I'm sure maybe you don't go exactly like this, like you did with the board, but I am sure that you are bringing some of these points forward, as I'm sure our board members will, in appropriate settings, just to, as again, we're not whining, we're not angry, it's not that, it's just information, basically sharing what the status is.
100%. So Family Empowerment Scholarship enrollment effects, all those things are now a part of what I share with other organizations now. It was not before. When I say going back years, now it is a part of what I share. And I will say almost to a place, they're very surprised when they start learning about things like Family Empowerment Scholarship. And then I said at the very beginning of this, so I apologize, strap in. So very important update on enrollment. I'm saying a very important update on enrollment. Looking back 10 years, if you come on up, Mr. Spolsky, if you look back 10 years, and then also going forward 10 years and where we currently are.
So before we go to Mr. Spolsky, I do have a comment. First of all, thank you for the great presentation, staff. But I would also like to say that it was this board with the superintendent's recommendation that we bring the Oaks firm on to help us with legislative priorities. I think that made a huge difference for Okaloosa having a voice in Tallahassee. And so to the Oaks group, thank you for all they do. But again, Mr. Chambers, Dr. Hale, everybody who was involved in last year's legislative priorities, I'll just say it made a difference. So.
Mr. Spolsky? You're on.
Good morning, Madam Chair, board members, superintendent, and staff. As Dr. Hale said, this is also one of my favorite weeks because we get to celebrate the men and women of the red, white, and blue tomorrow. And 56 years ago, my mom and dad decided to bring me into this great land. So I'm wearing my Fort Sill, Oklahoma pin today. My dad was in the Army. And I'm just honored to be here. So I am going to take just a few minutes, and I'm going to tell you what time it is. I'm not going to build you a watch, but I'm going to leave you with some important things to think about as it pertains to a lot of the things that this board just talked about with enrollment, with FES. I heard birth rates. Then we have to think of our area. I wrote down 3 words while the men and women of this board were talking, and that is affordability, addition, and ambiance. So a lot of people that come to this area want to come back to this area, or when they come to this area and they stay in this area. So I want you to think about that. I also want you to think about the affordability of this area for young families to come here and set up shop. And then addition, how is that affecting families as they expand? Is it affordable for the younger families to move in and actually have children here? Or are a lot of our people moving in past those years of their life? So there's a lot of those that play in with FES and all of the legislative pieces that Dr. Hale and our superintendent were speaking to today. So our October count, thanks to Ms. Meserve on AMI staff, she's a director that really keeps me, the renegade, out of trouble. But I am going out, Ms. Vancheck, Chairman Vancheck, Madam Chair, I should say, to go and share this message as it pertains not only to the north end, but the central and the south end. I've already visited some school advisory councils, I've talked to some community leaders, realtors, military leadership as well. It's very interesting how they are reacting to a lot of the different factors that are happening. And I would say that right now we have a tale of 2 regions, okay? We have our rectangle of Okaloosa County, and to the east of us is Walton, an equal rectangle, and to the left of us is Santa Rosa, a similar equal rectangle. However, we know that we are blessed to have a large military presence, and in that presence, our middle part of our region isn't as developed as, let's say, Walton or Santa Rosa. So everything north of the Shoal River is going through enormous growth, and I have a slide, I'll show you some of that. Everything in Niceville seems to kind of go up and down, but is not increasing. Overall, I'll show you some net numbers. And then the south is a totally different tale because of a lot of the things that I stated at the beginning of this briefing. We're seeing extreme constriction, which, as Dr. White mentioned earlier in the meeting, or inquired or commented on, it will require us to go through crossroads where we haven't had to go through and make tough financial decisions. We're in the people business. We're in the school business. We're not in the hardware business. But sometimes when we're going through these kinds of situations, we have to look at it from a fiscal piece. So look at Crestview. This is an 11-year look. We used our MGT partners. We looked at our data straight from MIS. Ms. Meserve scrubbed this along with our MGT piece. And it's very interesting. You say, well, boy, Crestview is growing in the last 4 or 5 years. We're looking over 5, 7, 9, 11 years over the long haul. Niceville. Notice the red in the Niceville area is elementary. That really galvanizes a lot about what we talked about with more options and choices for families, whether it's parochial, FES, homeschool, a lot of different pieces. And then this is the one to really focus in on. Red in elementary, red in middle, and red in high school. Now, you say to yourself, those aren't large percentage differences, 1.8, 0.4, and 0.08. But if you go back up to Crestview, you can see there 2.2, 14, 25. It gives you a sense of we're constricting in the south and we're definitely growing in the north.
And Mr. Spolsky, your numbers that you just put up there, and I haven't had a chance to look at them
Sir.
closely, but in the Twin Cities area, in the central zone, it looked like you have a bubble in elementary school.
Yes.
It's going to be coming, and you may expect the same thing to occur in the Twin Cities.
Yes, sir.
Fine.
Yes, sir.
As those students move through.
As those students move through, we can anticipate those bubbles really being received by those schools. Mm-hmm.
So, Mr. Spolsky, Madam Chair, if it's so, I noticed elementary decreased in Niceville and Fort Walton. Crestview, even though it increased, it wasn't like a huge number. It was a 2.2.
Yes, sir.
Or 0.2 per year. And I'm probably jumping ahead here, but I think we kind of talked a little bit about demography the other night.
We did.
And I want people to understand how much demography is affecting not just Okaloosa County, but our country as a whole. And so I can't wait to hear how you're going to talk about that. But I think it's important people understand demographics even more so than we ever have, because it is something that, in my opinion, is going to affect the United States as a whole in the upcoming generations. So.
Yes, sir. And we'll expand on that in some future slides here, sir. So let's look at not just elementary or not just middle, not just high school. These are color-coded by north, central, and south. And Ms. Meserve passed these numbers to Ms. Demers, and we put these graphically for really our school advisory councils to see. Even though these aren't steep trends, anytime we have trends like this that are either moving up, the north end's moving up, you can see in the south end, the green is moving down. That's quite a drastic down dip for only a 2-3 year period there. And then the central, you can see the last year or two is a little more static there. Now this is specifically elementary, so you really have to read the titles here and look at the X and Y axes to make sure you're extrapolating a good visual. Fort Walton Beach area elementary over 11-year period, but if you look from 25, 26 back to about 20, we came out of COVID, right? And then it's been on steady decline in the Fort Walton Beach, the south zone area for those elementaries. Niceville, just elementary. And then Crestview. We experienced a lot of gaps in our kindergarten classes this year. I remember Ms. Meserve calling me numerous times on the phone, surprised by some of the lower enrollment numbers in kindergarten due to some different options. However, the growth in the north end is really hiding that if we look at some of the maps. So look at the K-5 forecast. Those are the 3 zones I talked about. Really, the north of the Shoal River has 851 expected K-5 versus the central and the south. So this specific slide that came from our MGT partners is a long-term prediction. This goes out to 2034, takes into consideration birth rates, takes into consideration developers, takes into consideration a lot of those different growths that are happening in these different areas. And the truth is, what I shared with the School Advisory Council at a South End Elementary School, is we have multiple employees right now here that work in the central office that are building houses in the south. And they are literally buying an old home, built in the 50s with a carport. They are tearing it down, and then they are rebuilding a new home with a new developer because of the availability of space. At Hurlburt, when I met with base leadership last week with Ms. Card, we spoke to them that they have people coming in from Pensacola to work at Hurlburt, from East Milton, not so much Navarre anymore, because Navarre has become prime land. As you know, there's a lot of development going on for that area out there in Santa Rosa. Walton, you know what's happening on 331 to the west of us. Navarre, east of us, Walton. So I show you that forecast because there's a net loss there. If you say, well, Crestview is going to go up 850 students over the next decade, you still have to consider that between the central and the south, there'll be a net loss of 1,100. The 6 through 8 story isn't much different.
What's the average enrollment in an elementary school, for example, on your previous slide? I think you had 2 declines there, 607 and then 516. Isn't that pretty close to the size of an average elementary school?
Yes, actually in the south it is, sir. In the south, it is. In the north, they're quite larger, whether it's in Antioch or Riverside up north, but down south, yes, sir. Some are less than that.
And the Twin Cities as well.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I think that's a good question. And so you look at the north end, and these are off the top of the head, but they'll be close. The north end elementaries, 700 on average, even into the 800 on average. You look at the central, probably 600, 650, maybe even 700. You look at Blue Water and Blue. And in the south, many in the 400s.
436, 410 in the south versus 7, 8, 900 or 1,000 in the north.
So on this forecast slide, we're showing 607 empty seats in the school, basically.
Over the next decade.
What that means.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And you look at a trend across the state now, and I would assume the nation, so when you, I'll just stick to the state, when you start looking at those who are building new schools, and some have a greater ability to build new schools, so some aren't just building new schools for growth. Some are building new schools because they're older, but when they're building the new schools, where once maybe the school had 500, they're building schools of 1,200, 1,300 to maximize full resources, facilities, and finances.
Wow.
So I have a quick question going to the K-5 forecast. So Crestview, now this is an 11-year period. You're talking 851 students over that 11-year period, correct?
851 K through 5 students, if you added in.
Correct, 851
Yes.
K.
Yes, sir.
Over 11 years.
Yes, sir.
So I was just doing some math here, and we're talking about 77 students per year entering up on the north end, and we have seven elementary, so that's probably about 2 students per school possibly, if it's spread out correctly. But I'm trying to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying here. So 851 students, so 77 students per year is what we're looking at over that 11-year plus.
Well, and part of the vision of senior staff, and I think this board too, is to position us with room and land.
Right.
Which is what we're using Pine View for. That's why we really focused on a K-8 environment up there, is to provide more capacity and more flexibility for COE so they can move around up there. Also to take into consideration our Purple Star. We tried to help the military, what schools is best for their family. So Pine View is going to provide that K-5 buffer.
Correct. What I want people to, if they're watching this right now, 851 students, of course, someone's going to go, well, we need to build a new school. So what I'm getting at is that it's going to be spread out amongst the schools we have now. So, but it's still, a growth that's positive for us, but I don't know if necessarily, in the future, will we have to build a new school, considering that we probably have the capacity right now,
No, it's something we're keeping our eyes on, Mr. Bryant. The reason I started off saying the tale of two regions is we have to watch the expansion in the north and make sure that we have the infrastructure that can receive and lead those teachers, those administrators, and those students to where they need to be, right? While at the same time considering the constriction and the reduction of students in the south. So, good point, sir.
Mr. Spolsky, do we have any understanding of what the enrollment trends have been for Rocky Bayou or for Liza Jackson with regards, because it plays a part in the role of the central decline and the southern decline. Do we know whether or not they're experiencing any similar declines similar to us, or are they still growing? Do we have any idea or sense of what's happening on their side of it?
Well, I speak to the doc and the leadership over at Rocky Bayou, and they've been growing over the last 10 years. Liza, when they built their new building, go ahead, sir.
So Rocky Bayou, so if you think about how they're funded now.
Right.
So there's gonna be growth there. And I don't know the exact percentage, but there used to be a percentage of FES dollars going to their school What I don't know the exact number, but that number has risen dramatically.
Sure.
And a side note with Rocky is lower level enrollment tuition is equivalent to a family empowerment scholarship right now, which is what I found interesting. So they could take their family empowerment scholarship and pay for tuition and go to Rocky. Calvary has a bump in enrollment. St. Mary's doesn't show a large growth. It's a much smaller parochial school.
New elementary in Niceville.
Right. And isn't the Northwest Florida College talking about expanding to elementary?
To my knowledge, those discussions have halted, to my knowledge.
I'll galvanize superintendent's comment there. I spoke to the president last week, and they're going to focus on the grades that they have operating right now and not go that direction.
Well, I guess the reason I even went there was just trying to tease out to what extent is this in the South. I mean, my whole district's got red all over it. So just because District 2 is the Destin schools, southern schools, all along the beach, with the exception of Florosa. And the one thing I noticed when I first came on board was I went, golly, District 2 has a ton of elementary schools crammed into a very small area. And I understand why we had them, because they were all built in the 1950 to 1970 baby boom period, when all of those neighborhoods were young airmen starting families and enrolling their kids, and they needed them every other couple miles.
There were no other options.
Right, and there was no other competition.
So there were no other options, Dr. White. There was no other expectations. There was no other internet. There was no other homeschool. You went to a teacher to learn flashcards, the alphabet, how to write a sentence, and if you got really good at it, you could identify a prepositional phrase from a teacher. So I want to show this to, yes, sir.
So you think about what you just said, right? The north end, get off the top of the head, the north end has 2 less schools than the south end. So you just think about that, and then the average number that we just talked about approximately in those schools. And then the south zone having, again, 2 more schools than the north end. So when you look at all the schools in red, and then you look at where we are in today's finances that we've talked about with those legislative priorities, you look at where we are with FES and the impact of FES, and I'm going to say this, there's those who understand the FES story. There's some who might be a little bit more critical, and what I mean by that is, well, the Okaloosa County School District, then you do better. And I don't disagree with that. We have to do our job. But when you have FES dollars that are there, it's not a hard leap forward to suggest that others are going to develop these schools, because they know that there is a funding source to do so. And again, this isn't something that's just to Okaloosa. This is across the state of Florida. So those things are going to happen. And so we have to be positioned accordingly to continue, and we will, to be an outstanding school district. We have some of the finest teachers that any school district could have. We are blessed with absolutely fantastic students. We're blessed with an outstanding area where people want to live, but there's challenges with that as well. But it will lead itself to tough decisions that have to be made that we haven't had to deal with in a while, that other districts have had to deal with.
And Madam Chair, I think I know where this is going. And it's not rocket science. This is arithmetic. And Superintendent, I remember ages ago when schools were site-based, the first thing I was told was that you can't operate the school with empty seats because you don't have the revenue for it. So I guess we'll be waiting to hear where this is all going.
Well, with that being said, Dr. White, I have this slide that we put together for Champions of Education, but more importantly for staff to review each of our South End schools. Vice Chair Destin, I wanted you to really know we are looking and watching all those schools that are going through some of these lower enrollment periods right now. This briefing is not about money, it's not about FTE, it's about enrollment. And it's about birth rates and being able to afford to move into these areas, as well as compete against some of these other school options that are out there. And I told the military leadership last week that our military bases, our schools, our churches, and our small businesses are 4 foundational pillars that we don't mess with. However, when we're put in financial situations like this, we do have to analyze and look at all situations and solutions. When I did brief some of our school advisory councils, they were very receptive to the ideas of having to make these tough decisions as long as we're making them wisely and we're considering all the factors. I say this because I'm out on the road a lot. Superintendent Chambers and senior staff know that I'm out there doing a lot in the community with this kind of work. And the community embraces and trusts us because of the vision of this board and our superintendent and administration. It's true. And they know we have the strongest teachers. They do know that. They know we have great administrators. The people of our district are so highly qualified and so skilled, even though we're going through this tough time where we'll have to make some tough decisions and recommendations. I think most of them are behind us, but we have to communicate it clearly on what the plan is and what the solutions are down the road.
So with that being said, as you know, we've, the last number of meetings, we looked at family empowerment scholarships. We've looked at enrollment. We've talked about budgets, all leading to our legislative priorities of what we want to continue to push with the state, but also decisions that we will have to make. And when you look at enrollment, that is a tale of 2 counties, North End, everything else below the Shoal River. Then you have to start looking at what enrollments look like in specific schools. And when you know that based on information provided from the state that you're gonna have another challenging budget this upcoming year, you're gonna have another one after that, and then you have to position yourself accordingly to make sure that schools are staffed and manned in such a way where they can do what they need to do for students. You need to be able to have a district staff that's gonna be able to support schools. You can't do all of that in today's environment. And I wanna underscore today's environment. When you looked at the FTE projection coming into this year, so we knew by the projection we would go down 450 some odd students. And Mr. Spolsky, with allocations, in conjunction with Mrs. Perry, with the budget, we made sure that we were positioned accordingly for that dip. When you go to superintendent meetings, many were doing the same thing, positioning themselves accordingly for the dip. Let's go back to last year's FSA results. So students are getting their FSA results. Congratulations, you're a 5. Congratulations, you're a 4. Congratulations, whatever the score was. And then, oh yeah, by the way, on the score sheet, here's your family empowerment scholarship information to where you can get this opportunity, okay? So now that 450 something, and not just due to that, and some of it can be things where we need to get better. Some of it can be things where we need to get better, and there's opportunities out there. So that 457 turned into another 400 some odd students. I'm not great with math, but that's close to 1,000. And so that was a thing, multiple districts across the state didn't necessarily expect that addition. So now here you are with that addition, with the reality of family empowerment scholarships, there's not a cap, like in other states, there's not a cap. So do we believe that, if I were to say, Mrs. Meserve, what's our FTE projection gonna be for next year? Well, I would assume that Mrs. Meserve's gonna go, okay, if we thought that this was the number last year and it turned into this, probably gonna take an even more conservative approach, knowing that this is a factor that's in public education today. So to be able to be positioned strong, if you look at business, if business is large and income is not necessarily there, you got to make some adjustments. And so we will be looking at some adjustments. My hope, and this is not a for sure, I'm not writing this in stone, my hope is by the December board meeting, I'll be coming to you with a recommendation. That's my hope, but I'll just say very clearly to this board, I will not rush anything. I will not rush anything. But at the same token, we have to be prepared for next school year and definitely the year after. And when you sit in my seat, and yours as well, when you sit in these seats, it's easy for folks to have thoughts of what should be done. It's easy. And I fully understand when you have to make tough decisions that everyone has opinions on that. And I'm fine with that, or wouldn't be sitting here. But the thing that I can tell you is when you look at data, that's what we'll be looking at. We'll be looking at data and then what's best for our school district, which means what's best for our students, our families, and our employees. I don't think school districts across the state necessarily expected going down the number that we did this year due to multiple factors. And again, I want to be clear, there's areas where we can be better as a school district, but I think we're a pretty darn good school district as well.
And you say that there's areas that you feel like we can be better, which I think all, and I'm sure you're, with your senior staff looking at that and even working with the board, but also, we also know that in part of this Family Empowerment Act, many of those students still take advantage of some aspects of our school district, okay? That cannot be provided to them in their other setting. So we must be doing some things right here. Also, I do think, many of us, like Mr. Spolsky said, you just, basically, we grew up, you went to your school, was all that. You didn't hear a lot of pushing it, but I do think we are now in a time where we have to almost, for lack of a better word, advertise what is right and what's, what we can offer. So they put us in a competitive situation, and as Mr. Heinley said, we need to be proactive on it. We have so many great things that we need to push that out there into the public to make sure, and I know we do that in a certain, I know Ms. Card, a bunch of people do that, but I think maybe a more active role, each of us, to make sure that people are aware of how, what great things we can offer our students.
And Madam Chair, along those lines, it makes me think about something that else the legislature did, and that would be to allow those students who are not invested with us during the day to come back and participate on athletic teams and band programs and all those kinds of things. And maybe one day you guys can take a look and if it's possible, and extract those numbers, just so we know how many of those folks are coming back to us for those extra things that we provide, because that made it a little bit harder for us too, in one way, that they didn't have to go to school with us during the day, but they could come back and fill our sports teams and bands and all that kind of stuff too. So I would be interested just to know if any of them did, or what that number might be. Oh, okay.
We will get you that number, Dr. White, to share. We also are sending out information digitally and with some professional graphics adjustments by Mr. Mers, really inviting them to come in the advertisement sense, as you said, Madam Chair. So I remember years ago in the early 2000s, I had a superintendent call me when I was wearing orange and blue at Bruner and scolding me for bleeding to Liza that was at the old Walmart where Academy Sports is now. And so I sent out postcards just to get them to come and do private tours at the school. Many of our principals do that now. They invite families in, especially the ones that are going through a revitalization of an older neighborhood. They know how to work the culture, and they know how to get the people in there and then introduce their people to the potential families. But more than ever, it's important to follow that recommendation, is to get our words out there, to get our people out there, because families send their kids to schools because of the people and the relationships. That's what they do. And those activities mentioned by Madam Chair and those numbers on who those names are, as you mentioned, sir, are important. So,
Yep, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
we're hitting the 2.5-hour mark. Can we take a break fairly soon?
Let me just add, you have
Yeah,
some more
and I
things?
might be in the middle of, yeah, okay.
No, I was gonna say, that's all I have.
Good timing, good timing.
Well, I'm going to say this conversation obviously is going to continue.
Yes, 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 yes.
So I do have one quick comment regarding the superintendent's presentation today. So first of all, thank you for a great presentation. I know we've talked privately about what's going to happen to the school district and what our responsibility is going to be. And, you know, I use the phrase, we're going to pick the can up. And as a board and as a staff, I know the decisions we're going to have to make in the future are going to be tough, but I appreciate your leadership and your staff leadership and this board knowing that we're going to do what's right for Okaloosa schools, but we're going to do it with compassion and grace, but also with the understanding that we're put in a position now, you know, it's not us, like Mrs. Vanchek said, we're not trying to be the bad guys here. We're just in a position that we're going to have to make these tough decisions. So, but great presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so we're ready to move on. Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Let's move to 13, board members' announcements, requests for information. Mr. Hiley, we're going to start with you.
Well, since you've been leading us in the chair position, you now have the record of having the longest meeting since I've been a board member.
Y'all saved it for me.
And because of that, I will withhold my remarks for tonight's meeting.
Okay, and Mr. Destin?
I'll do the same.
Okay. Mr. Bryant?
I will do say, but I will say that we have had a 6.5-hour meeting when
that's-
I was the chair. When I was chair.
Another era, yeah. Dr. White?
Just very quickly, good luck to the Choctawhatchee football team.
Yes, yeah, that's right. Okay, so moving along, 14, public comment. This will be the yellow card, general public comments. Members of the public desiring to address the school board with general comments, and we won't know that till tonight. We're down to adjournment, but right before that, I do want to say, if you missed it, earlier today, we did have an annual organizational meeting of this board. You can go back and look at that workshop and see some changes for positions. Some are pretty obvious, I think, but there's some others if you want to see that. Anything else, Mr. Strong, Ms. Appleberg, anybody else? All right, my first meeting as chair is adjourned.